favorite Oreo versus Adith, round 2 of the OLS. All right, now Oreo is someone who has brought some off-kilter decks in the past, so while this looks like Indoor Spiders, I do have to check and make sure that that is the case. You never know with this guy. Oh no, I lost it. Oh no, I'm about to sneeze. Okay, that's definitely Indoor Spiders, right? Like that's... Oh, bless me. Sorry about that. RIP to anyone's eardrums. Okay, this is definitely Indoor Spiders. Right, like this can't be anything else, and it is going to be a full ship away from Oreo. It looks like it is not the spell-less version that we generally see. It is going to be a spell version with some Neverglade collectors, and overall, actually not a great opening hand from Oreo. It is going to have to take a couple of turns off, and then on the side of Edith, it looked like Lucian, I think, is what I saw. So I think it was Lucian Callista. Those are some champs that we generally see synergize a little bit. Yeah, the Cursed Keeper, the Revive package, as I like to call it, probably going to be coming out of this deck. Things like Cursed Keeper, Ravenous Butcher, Chronicler of Ruin, things like that. Yeah, this is as much as you would like to block the Cursed Keepers in order to just stop the stream of reviving them coming out of your opponent, disenabling any missed calls or things like Chronicler of Ruin, Ethereal Remitter. Oreo's just not well poised to actually deal with the 4/4 currently, and can push through 7 damage this turn if nothing comes out to stop it. Turn 4 going to be another awkward one for him, but you don't hate banking the 3 spell mana and throwing down the 1-drop. And he does have a pretty good curve from turn 5 onward. Let me see if I can check Adith's deck list, but generally the power of Neverglade Collector is that there's not a lot of removal that you could even have for him. So the 2 will likely just get to sit on board. I'm not sure why these streams start off so low volume. It's probably something that I can adjust, but it feels so weird going from like listening to that really intense League of Legends music to like just the ambient silence of me talking and the Runeterra gameplay. Let me actually turn this up a bit. But yeah, I'm trying to get back to the deck lists so I can see if Adith's running any Vengeances or anything like that. I would assume it's not out of the realm of possibility for Ruination to be coming out of a deck like this, because I assume that the Undying is in there somewhere. Adith. Oh. Okay, this is actually not as strong of a follow-up as I expected from Adith. Just throwing out another Cursed Keeper, even holding back on the Escaped Abomination, not wanting to trade it off for the Spiderling. I mostly just want to see if there's Ruinations in this deck. Okay, it was Lucian Hecarim, there we go. Okay, so this is a Shark Chariot deck, actually. There's only a couple copies of Shark Chariot and no real other ephemeral units, but he does just want to add some power onto the Hecarims. There we see Mark of the Isle, Relentless Pursuits. Okay, Haunted Relics even coming out. I kind of like Haunted Relics in any deck that contains Lucian or Callista. Just basically getting you the... Well, it gets you an auto level up on Callista. It gets you most of the way there on Lucian. And it looks like now Oreo is debating between the Brood Awakening and the Neverglade Collector. It's got a pretty high life total, so I understand not necessarily going for the Collector. Personally, I do think that is the play that I prefer, as you do have some decent attacks here with the Cursed Keeper and the... man, what is this guy's name? Stupid Shadow Isle 1-drops, man. Their names are hard to remember because they all have very similar pictures. Because there's this, and then there's the, like, Mage Seeker Conservator looks like a Shadow Isle card, just art-wise, but it's actually, you know, a Demacia card. Warden's Prey, there we go. So yeah, now Oreo is actually in a bit of an awkward... Like, obviously you always attack with the Cursed Keeper, but in terms of what else you can attack with, I'm actually just going to pass it over, not wanting his opponent to get anything down post-combat. Perhaps playing around something like a Radiant Guardian, as there are a couple of those in Adith's deck list. And this Indoor, I believe, is extremely small currently. Can't be bigger than a 4/4 if my math is right. Yep, just a 4/4. I'm so good. I'm getting so good at just eyeballing, you know, Endure math. I am happy about that. It's kind of weird because I don't remember how I come to these numbers. They just kind of happen. And it looks like Edith has a difficult decision to make. It's just going to be a pass back over. Going to see the Mistwraith come down from Oreo instead of the second Neverglade Collector. Says if you do have some sort of... If this is the Ruination turn, I don't want to lose both of my Neverglades. And there are actually no Ruinations in the deck for Edith. I think I had mentioned that earlier, so... I'm not actually sure what Oreo is playing around here, and I do think I would have preferred getting the Collector down over this Mistwraith. Perhaps just wanting a second 2-attack blocker to dissuade this Escaped Abomination. But this seems like a really awkward stalemate for these players to be having. Alright, the Lucian comes down, and I don't think there's... Okay, no, there's really nothing to, like, prevent Neverglade Collector from just blocking the Lucian. We do see Senna come down. It's going to dissuade that a little bit. But honestly, your favorite Oreo really wants to start blocking out some of these things, getting his units to die so he can tick up this They Who Endure, as there is no big removal on the side of Edith. No Vengeances or anything like that. No Purifies even, so... As long as Oreo can play a little patiently with this They Who Endure, it should be pretty easy for him to pick this one up. Especially since he has the Brood Awakening to go ahead and continue to wall up. There's no overwhelm coming out of these Lucian or Senna, so the double strike almost not impactful in any capacity. And here we could just see a soften up onto the Neverglade Collector. Of course, there is a chance that Oreo just takes the damage. Since he will have out double Neverglade Collector, he can actually play very fast and loose with his life total, because those are units that are not going to be getting threatened anytime soon. And any unit that he plays will give him 2 health back. Or any unit that dies, rather, will give him 2 health back and deal 2 to his opponent. It looks like he's going to throw out the double blocks here. I actually really don't like this. I really don't like this. It looks like he's playing really hard for that Brood Awakening on the following turn. He is actually in a bit of an awkward spot because I don't think he can attack with that Spiderling. One way that you could lose this game is if that Lucian does upgrade, and then your wall out potential gets a lot less as he continues to take multiple combat phases throughout the game. And we're actually going to see the Brood Awakening fired off here. This is interesting to me. It does make it so that the second Neverglade Collector would have to overwrite one of these spiders to come down. And I do really like the idea of double Collector, but it looks like there is a different plan in Oreo's head since, as I mentioned, he did not go for the playing a little loose with his life total, did go for the double block, which means he's not really valuing this double Collector plan. So the Brood Awakening makes sense for the plan that he's going for, just going wide, attacking out. The Vengeance pickup is actually insanely good for this strategy since you will be able to take out the Lucian after the Senna blocks. It's a little awkward still because if you Vengeance the Lucian while the Senna is blocking so that he doesn't get to upgrade, then the Senna doesn't actually die because she only takes 2 damage. A little surprised to see Edith not go for the block to force the Lucian upgrade. Okay, that makes a lot of sense. Is going to go for the Chronicler, and this is actually really bad for Oreo because... Now Lucian is upgraded, and when he goes for the Vengeance, the Senna will upgrade. But all subsequent versions of Lucian are upgraded already. That's not something you can do anything about. Okay, that makes a bit more sense, yeah. Okay, this... it's all coming together now. So Edith at 8 life total. Oreo sitting with an 8 mana or an 8 attack Adore and an Atrocity in hand. Looking at Edith's deck list, there's nothing he can do about this. It would have to be double single combat to kill the They Who Endure, which would just eat an infinite amount of resources since it would require both the Senna and the Lucian since they are the only 4 attack units. But as I mentioned, no Purify, no Vengeance, no nothing coming out of the side of Edith does mean this should be game number 1 going the way of your favorite Oreo, barring a miracle out of Edith. Does still have the opportunity to do it. There is still double single combat mana. It's extremely unlikely. And as I mentioned, will eat an impossible amount of resources. There's also an opportunity for Oreo to just throw down the second Neverglade Collector here and just try and choke this one out by blocking, as every unit that dies would represent 2 damage to Edith's Nexus. But instead it is just going to be the Atrocity. A clean pickup here from your favorite Oreo in game number 1. Now, looking at Oreo's lineup, it was TF Swain, this deck, and then... Karma Lux. So I would assume that the Karma Lux got banned out, which means we will get to see some TF Swain action. This is a deck that I'm very well versed in. It's interesting. I'm curious to see if he went for the Pilfer package or not. That is kind of the direction a lot of players have been taking this deck recently. Going for the Black Market Merchant and Pilfered Goods. We're going to see Adith stick onto this Lucian Hecarim ephemeral deck. I don't really want to call it an ephemeral deck, but generally when you see something like this, it's like an Undying deck. And while there is a lot of Undying package stuff in here, we see things like the Ravenous Butcher, Vanguard Redeemer, Chronicler, Radiant Guardian. This is actually more of just a I don't actually know what to call this one, because like the Shark Chariot also isn't really the game plan. It's kind of like a value revive deck. It's not all in on the Undying strategy, but it's pretty close. And I would say turn 1 miss there for Adith, but he actually doesn't play any turn 1 units, which is a little surprising. It kind of affects your burn matchup a little bit if you're not running at least something like a Hapless Aristocrat to stonewall out a couple of unit attacks. But with as aggressive as a curve as he has on 2 and 3, it would make sense that he can potentially just race the burn decks, as well as having 3 Radiant Guardian. Certainly doesn't hurt either. But we're going to see a slow start from both players, and Oreo actually not throwing down the House Spider on 2, instead wanting to bank the spell mana. Could be going for a salvage this turn then. Could have gone for one last turn as well, but Oreo liking to save the spell mana. I think we're... okay. So this all comes out, and I'm pretty sure Oreo has to go for a Make It Rain here. Otherwise, we are going to see a Lucian come out on the side of Adith and get very close to the evolution right off the bat. Oh, but it is going to be the House Spider, which means Lucian almost certainly going to come out here. There is an answer from Oreo. It does have the Death's Bite. Never mind. Okay. Throw all of that out the window. This is actually just to push the Hecarim upgrade. And using this offensively instead of defensively makes me think that Adith already has the Hecarim in hand. So, we're pretty likely to see Hecarim on 6 out of Adith if he is going for an aggressive Stirred Spirits instead of holding that back for its defensive capabilities, since he doesn't seem to... I can't... Sorry. Missing turn 2 and then doing that on turn 3 does read to me that he is stuck on a high curve hand, which does also play more towards the Hecarim. Now it's not as likely that he's going for the Hecarim play. It could just have been setting up for the Vanguard Redeemer. It's pretty reasonable. I do think the Hecarim's still more or less likely. Now we see Zap Sprayfin coming out. And yeah, just a lot of removal on the side of Oreo. His hand's not looking phenomenal, but he does have 2 copies of Salvage to kind of fix that up. Shore him up going into the mid game. Now we're seeing Adith get a little bit more aggressive. We're actually going to see a full out attack from Oreo, going to set up for the Make It Rain. Does have a decent option to actually deal with this Escaped Abomination, so going to fire that one off right now. Takes us a little bit closer to the Swain. Not that it's super relevant. Oreo looking like he's going to have absolutely no trouble leveling that one up this game. And the life totals all but even here in turn number 4. Both these players having kind of a slow start, which I think favors Oreo. He is a bit favored in the late game, especially with this double salvage in hand, if Adith continues to stumble with his plays here. And you see Lucian come out, and Oreo already prepped with the Death's Hand, ready to fire that one off onto Lucian. And I don't think there's any way to actually protect this. Yeah, it is just going to be the Glimpse Beyond coming out in response, going to prevent the 2 damage, draw a couple of cards. It looks like Oreo is debating a second copy of Death's Hand to prevent the draw, which I definitely think is reasonable. Given how much draw power you have, and your opponent gets a little bit more value out of his, you don't want that necessarily happening. Of course, there are still more Lucians and Sennas in the deck. Death Hand is one of the best tools to deal with them. Ravenous Flock, pretty ineffective against them, but is going to greed it out a little bit, in my opinion, and go for this second Death's Hand. Prevent the draw, but it does mean that Oreo's hand is considerably weaker in terms of removal. A second copy of Lucian or a Senna would be nigh impossible to deal with, since Flock can't come down until they've started to block things, which is pretty unlikely. We're actually just going to see a second Glimpse Beyond out of Adith. 2 pair from both players, going to come out in favor of Adith. And that's only 2 damage pushed through for the Swain evolution. Oreo likely going to block with this Spiderling, setting up for the Ravenous Flock. Definitely don't mind this at all. Round 6. This should be the Hecarim coming out of Adith if I am worth my salt in any capacity. There's a non-zero chance that Oreo actually pushes the Citrus Courier this turn. But I do like getting these salvages down sooner rather than later. Okay, it's going to be a Cursed Keeper, so it's possible that Adith was actually just going for the Vanguard Redeemer play, valuing that as his best line rather than setting up for the Hecarim like I kind of thought he was. 2 Swains picked up. They're kind of far off of their level up because the Death's Hand did both get dropped out by the Glimpse Beyond, but it will only take 2 copies of Ravenous Flock to upgrade both of them. And the House Spider going to come down, make both Ravenous Flocks live, you would assume. I don't think this second Escaped Abomination is not attacking on the following turn. The mana advantage in Adith's favor, the card advantage in Oreo's favor, although his board is weaker, and the life advantage for Oreo as well. But I do think these Swains are actually just going to start to really pick up a lot of value because there is no removal in Adith's deck. That 7 health unit is hard to chew through. There's almost no chance that he's actually going to get through on a Nexus Strike, but that's not really what you need Swain for. Just one of the reasons I think the card is so good. And the Noxian Fervor pickup actually helps push towards that level up. Not that I think he's going to need it. I do think Swain and double Ravenous Flock is pretty likely to happen this turn. Of course, Oreo doesn't necessarily have to play the Swain now, can just wait until post-combat. He's definitely got a large life total to play with. Is fine to just eat this shark. I'm a little surprised to see the Ravenous Butcher attack, so that's just going to get eaten up by a House Spider. I would assume the 4/4 Abomination going to line up with this Spider, and we're going to see a Ravenous Flock onto the 4/3. Hard-pressed to imagine... there's not really a lot of lines for Oreo this turn. He could go for the Noxian Fervor if he wanted to. That would push the Swain 1 from level up. Of course, the Ravenous Flocks would get it done anyway. This one prevents the most damage. And with your opponent only being at 12, it is possible for you to try and win this game with the burn damage that the Noxian Fervor provides. Of course, Adith is on 5 mana, so it's possible that the Ravenous Butcher attack came out because Radiant Guardian wants to come down this turn. Of course, the Shark Chariot will die anyway, so no matter what, Adith's got Radiant Guardian if he wants it. Oh, and we're actually going to see Mark of the Isle. Going to push through a fair amount of damage, but without any additional direct damage. You know, there's nothing like Atrocity or Commander Ledros coming out of this deck. It will just be used as protection from the removal. It looks like Noxian Fervor is being considered here. The second Ravenous Flock also a consideration. Although I don't think Oreo actually has to be this defensive with his life total. And using the Noxian Fervor here would take him off of being able to Ravenous Flock this second Escaped Abomination. Of course, Swain will be at 4 attack no matter which removal spell he uses, so it's not the worst thing in the world. Would be able to contest that anyway, and it will be the second Ravenous Flock fired off. I love the animation on this card too. The black feathers going everywhere, the cool red little explosion. And we're only going to see 3 damage pushed through onto Oreo, who maintains the card advantage thanks to the Shark Chariot dying. We will see Swain come down now. And there is potential for Oreo to win the game next turn. Could throw out the Noxian Fervor onto face, stun one of the units. Not going to have the mana to play it with Citrus Courier though, and there is the Radiant Guardian that I had mentioned. Could bring Adith's life total back in and give him the opportunity to stall out the win of this game. Radiant Guardian, definitely the best thing to contest the Swain, but a Twisted Fate pickup is actually really big. That gives him the opportunity to he can either gold card the Radiant Guardian if he wants to push the damage onto it, or he can just red card and then Swain will take care of that for him. Will be the red card. Swain gonna stun up the Radiant Guardian. 2 health left on this Escaped Abomination. And he has the removal spells to either stun it out as well or push through the damage. Could just Ravenous Flock it, could Noxian Fervor the face to stun that out as well. And there's really not a lot of fearsome blockers in Adith's deck. And the Chronicler of Ruin going to reset the Radiant Guardian. I actually do like holding everything back here. Oreo actually has a pretty good setup, and this is why I still really like Citrus Courier in the deck. It's a card that's been getting cut a lot more, but because you have the opportunity to do something like Noxian Fervor your Swain next turn, deal 3 to your opponent's face, stun the strongest backline unit, then Citrus Courier to full heal the Swain. We actually are going to see the Swain attack as well. This is a little scary. It does take you off of a free Noxian Fervor in the sense that it will cost you a unit if you're going to use it, which isn't the end of the world. But also worth noting, there's not a lot that Adith has to actually threaten this Twisted Fate. There are 3 copies of Single Combat, but outside of that, there's nothing. Which does mean, with the salvage in hand, it's not unreasonable for this Twisted Fate to actually stick around long enough to come out for the level up, and if you've ever played against a leveled up Twisted Fate, you know how absolutely backbreaking it can be. Now we do see a House Spider come out. I actually like this a lot. It does give a great opportunity for the Noxian Fervor to stun out I believe it'll still hit Radiant Guardian, since it is the highest attack unit. Oh, and we see Leviathan come out as well as Twisted Fate. Leviathan definitely going to be able to end this game if Adith can't find an answer to this Swain. It looks like Oreo probably contemplating how dead he is if he wants to throw out this Leviathan, how much damage he can prevent. I think it's fine to throw away the Twisted Fate, especially since you picked up a second copy. Twisted Fate, definitely one of the cards that gets a lot of value when he enters the battlefield, so I definitely don't hate throwing him away if you do have an extra copy. Although I would like to see Oreo play a little conservatively with this Swain. I think the consideration that he has is that this, so this Swain's Ravenous Flock likely going to be used to take out this Radiant Guardian, and then we'll probably see a House Spider. I actually really don't like the naked Ravenous Flock here. I'd rather wait until we're in combat. I think you do want to get down something like a House Spider. I haven't run the math. I don't think you're dead if you play this Leviathan, but it looks like Oreo not willing to take the risk. As this Hecarim actually should be upgrading off of this. I believe it's at 4 out of 7. So as long as Adith holds back the Escaped Abomination, we'll see the Spectral Riders and the Shark Chariot come back out. Upgrade the Hecarim. Okay. Actually, that definitely feels like a misplay. The Hecarim would have been upgraded with the Shark Chariot, would have turned the Spectral Riders into 5/2s, would have turned the Shark Chariot into a 6/1. So I definitely understand holding back the Leviathan. But yeah, this is a lot cleaner for Oreo. Like a lot cleaner. We are going to see the life total swing pretty heavily into Adith's favor. But Oreo will still have the chance to get down Swain this turn. And then as long as he can get down Leviathan on the next turn, Hecarim's never going to be able to attack again. Ooh, I don't like this. I really don't like this. I would have much, like... So in my head, I think it's much better to develop the Swain here and then develop the Leviathan on your turn, and then this Hecarim just never gets to attack again. So killing it really doesn't matter to me. But now Oreo doesn't have the opportunity to develop both of them. And I feel like he's actually not in a great spot if Adith can get down another Hecarim. We've seen Adith floating a lot of mana so far this game. I'm not sure what his hand could be at this point. Leviathan looking great, but we're a couple turns off the Swain Leviathan combo because we used the Noxian Fervor. And Oreo not looking too healthy. Citrus Courier could help that out a little bit, but we're also a couple of turns off of that, I think. Definitely a lot of options for Oreo on the next turn. Swain, probably not the best play, does set up for this, Chronicler of Ruin to just block it out. I think Leviathan's the most likely. Could see Twisted Fate and Citrus Courier played in the same turn, but that also seems pretty unlikely. Yeah, Leviathan seems pretty okay here. There are a couple copies of Relentless Pursuit in Adith's deck. That is something you have to be cognizant of, but with how small his board currently is, I think it's pretty unlikely that he goes wide enough to actually blow you out. But since you have the attack token this turn, I think making the bigger mana commitment here is definitely okay. Oh, and we actually just see an end round out of Edith. I think Oreo has to know that this means that there's very likely a Radiant Guardian in his hand. Yeah, and I actually do like not attacking there. You can kind of just choke out the game at this point because Edith's deck is so light on removal. I think it's much better to hold back and just kind of let the Swain Leviathan take over the game. And I do think that there's Radiant Guardians in the hand of Edith. There are 3 copies in the deck. We've only seen 1 come down so far. I actually think not attacking with Zap Spray Fin was a little weird, but I do like holding back the Leviathan. I think when players just open pass to you and they have all of their mana after you've made a big play, it does seem very enticing to just throw down the pass button and sort of eat their turn. But I feel like it's not a mind game as often as people seem to think it is. I think more often than not, it's your opponent legitimately doesn't have any plays, and it's much better for them that you didn't do anything. I don't really like a Zap Spray Fin here. I think I like Swain, and then I like Twisted Fate depending on what your opponent plays. Like, if my opponent just attacks with all this, I'm really not too concerned about it. We are going to see Oreo throw down the red card, though. It's possible that Oreo actually goes for the Citrus Courier this turn, then. And the problem that I have with this play is now if there is a Radiant Guardian, then it comes down pre-combat. Oh, and I don't... So I don't even really like the Swain here either. You are actually in danger of dying if your opponent has a couple copies of Mark of the Isle. Never mind. So there's only 2 Mark of the Isle in the deck for Edith, and we did see 1 come out earlier onto the Escaped Abomination. So thanks to the nerf, he's not actually in lethal danger, but there's 2 copies of Radiant Guardian. This does mean that we're going to have to see some blocks out of Oreo. Edith's going to go up to 20, but I'm pretty sure he's dead on the following turn thanks to the Leviathan Swain combo, especially with the Citrus Courier. So I guess there's really... I might have been a little overly harsh. I don't think this was necessarily a misplay. It's a different line than I would have taken, but Oreo not playing around the Radiant Guardian that he had been playing around previously. Of course, you are still in just a great spot to win out this game. I think blocking with the Zap instead of the TF is a little... I don't think it actually matters. Yeah, I don't really like suscepting the Swain to the single combat. Leviathan is also a little scary to suscept to it. I don't think you have to actually block all of these. I think you're fine to take 1 attack. I'd rather take out the Chronicler of Ruin than block the Radiant Guardian, since we do know with 1 mana, there's a chance that Edith puts you at 1, but there's no other direct damage in the deck. And I don't think we see lethal now. Without the Citrus Courier, at least. This is going to be a lot of damage getting pushed through. I guess I don't mind it too much. We do still have a couple copies of Make It Rain to stun anything else that comes down, so I'm hard-pressed to imagine Edith coming back from this one and have to be a single combat onto the Leviathan. But that could just get snuffed out by a Ravenous Flock. If it happens post-combat. But you want it to happen post-combat, because if Edith single combats here, he's only going to gain 3 health. But this is his last opportunity for Ravenous Flock to not kill it. And based on the ordering, I think Edith actually knows that the Ravenous Flock is in Oreo's hand. I think that the Swain still sitting in hand is the one that was searched by the Leviathan, just based on where it is in hand. It's not something I paid that much attention to earlier on, but now that I'm looking at it, I'm kind of noticing that that seems reasonable. What you got here, Edith? There's not a lot you could have. It's almost certainly got to be single combat, right? Or maybe he's going for a Glimpse Beyond? No, it's just going to be the pass. So now we're going to see Swain clear out a few of those units, get a second stun down onto the Radiant Guardian. And then at 3 HP. Okay, so I didn't actually do the math on what would happen, but it turns out Oreo can just end the turn now. We're going to see the full art flash from Oreo. If those of you who remember, he was co-commentating with me a couple of weeks ago. We used Swain as his picture instead. This is a card that he is a big fan of. We don't even actually have to see the Citrus Courier. We could just see an end the turn from Oreo, and Leviathan will clean this one up, which obviously is a bit safer. If your opponent passes priority, then you just hit the OK button and you win. There's no need to get fancy. Of course, there is nothing in Edith's deck there's nothing in Edith's deck that can stop this. We could even just see Make It Rain come out here to stun out the Radiant Guardian again. This is one I want to coin a term for what happens when, like, the game is over, but the players do not yet know that the game is over, and they're still playing it out, or like somebody is just like they can just push one button and win the game. Like if Oreo just passes priority here, then the Otis of Burn, yeah, if you just hit end round, okay. So we did see that happen. Oreo picking this one up a little bit quicker. It seemed like he was toying with his food, but then does go for the quick pickup on just the end turn as soon as the priority was passed from Edith. So I believe that is 2-0 Oreo, if I remember round 1 correctly. Or game 1 correctly, rather. So we're going to go back to me while I check out what backup streams we have. And we have no backup streams. It looks like everybody else has already finished their game. That one did take about a half an hour.